Now, as far back as I can remember, I probably around 3-year-old at the time, or maybe 4. But I remember Mrs. Curley said to me one night above in the house, Joe Dennis, you're not going home yet. She said, the Tans will get you. So I just got up on me and away with myself out the door. And as I went out on the road, I heard this big heavy truck coming up the Harlake Hill, that's Hurley's Hill, the other side of Lusk. And I presumed to be coming out from the direction of Gormanstown. But I run as hard as I possibly could, and of course, being only a little lad, I couldn't run that fast. And the lorry was closing up on me all the time, and I was starting to sweat. But one of the Tans jumped off the lorry and he followed me down the lane. I lived there in the back of the school up there on the green at the time. And he caught on me just before I reached the door. And I was roaring, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. And my mother ran out and she says, what's wrong, what's wrong? And this fella grabbed a hold of me and he says, what's this young fella doing out this hour of the night? And I said, leave him alone, he's all right, she said. And she took me up, but he gave me a little tap on the shoulder and sent me off about my business. But another little incident I can remember about the Tans too was my father always had an ass in car, fairly big, large ass, and a very essential thing to have an ass at the time, because he was just the same as a person having a motor car now or a lorry. The ass was every bit as essential then, and everybody used to get a loan of him. But he used to be out rambling around, grazing along the roads and that, and at night time he'd always come home on his own. But this particular night he didn't come home. So my father went out the next morning looking for the ass, and someone met him on the road, and he says, Tommy, he says, I see your ass is dead on the main road over there. The Tans lorry hit him last night and killed him. He says he's over there dead now. And that's the only thing I can remember about the Tans. Like, it's little incidents like that. But I often heard my mother saying too that, oh, them bloody Bowsies were around last night. They were all around Lusk, searching Lusk last night. But I never realised what they were looking for. But there's only in latter years that now that I know what they used to be searching, but they used to be searching for members of the area that was mixed up in trouble before that in the 1916. But unfortunately, some of them were picked up all right, but some of them got away, lucky enough. But it's just 2 little incidents like that that I can remember the Tans. I can remember the church being built. I didn't remember the foundation going in, but I had a little of the church built when I started to remember it. And a lot of the stones were all out on the green. That's how I can remember it so well. A lot of the stones were all out on the green and they were all numbered and marked. And I'm led to believe that the reason they were all numbered and marked was that they were belonged to the old church and they were put back. The pillars that's in the present church were all belonged to the old church, and the pillars were all the stones were all numbered as they were taken out of the old church, put back. Now there was quite a lot of Lusk men employed in the building of that church. And Callan Fendley was the priest. There was the man that was the start of the building of the church. And then he died, and Father Flood then come after that. And after that, we had Father McMahon. But that church was built around 1923-24. I think it opened up for its first Mass in 1926. And as far as I can remember, Martin Gallagher was the first man that was ever married in that church. Now, as I said a moment ago, a lot of these menkind from Lusk worked on that building of that church. But we had some great workmen in Lusk at that time. Not everybody worked at the church, of course. They had to go elsewhere to work. And as we always knew all these men by nickname, and I can always remember that if you called a man by his Christian name, he wouldn't know who you were talking to. You had to call him by his nickname. Some of them often had to walk as far as Rush to work. Some of them walked to Hollywood Quarry to work. And women had to work also. Women always had to get out and do their part too. And when farmers were doing their harvesting in the fields, they had no combines. That time it was all done by mow machine or a binder. But there'd be always straggly straw left around the fields. Women then used to go out and they used to get so much an hour, or maybe so much according to how much they'd pick. the farmers always employ the women for to do that. Or they might go out picking potatoes. And there's the way they had to work. And nearly every household in the village reared a pig that time, or maybe two, and hens. That was their livelihood. And they depended on that for when their rates were due, or their rent was due, or they'd have a child for first communion or confirmation. They would depend to have this pig ready and fit for the market, so that they get a few pounds together for that purpose. And they always kept them in a little cot at the back of the house. And many a time they had to bring the pig through the house to load them on the cart for the market. And of course, everybody hadn't big bungalows at that time. We're well ahead of our time now with big bungalows and that. They were only small little houses at the time. And the whole village was pinpointed with all these little houses. And unfortunately, a lot of them all fell. But there's new houses all built in their places. But to mention some of these characters that I'm talking about, that I mentioned a while ago, that for instance now, when I was saying about the pigs, we had a man by the name of Mickey Scally. Well, they called him the Daler Scally. And the reason they called him the Daler Scally was he'd always know when you had a pig for sale, and he'd be keeping his eye out on that. And the minute that pig went to the market, in fact it might be him that might bring the pig to the market for you, he would be in touch with another man by the name of Barnes from Drogheda, and he'd arrive up then around the area in a horse and car with little bonhams in the back of the car. In a horse and car now, not a motor car. And he'd go around then and he'd supply these people with a small little bonhams again. He would have to sell their pig, put her out for their next lot. And that's how he got the name of the Daler Scally. But then you had another man by the name of Strikey McAnally. Strikey lived in there the back of Joe Mackey's in quite a big garden there, and he used to grow a lot of vegetables and mostly gooseberries. And he made his living out of that. Then you had another couple of men up further then. You had the Cracker sweeping, and Cracker had a little shop. And he worked with Pat Jensen for a long number of years, and then when he retired from that, he carried on the shop then until his old age, until he died. Then you had the Blade Russell. Now, I'm not sure where the Blade Russell come in, where he lived, but you had a man by the name of Blade Russell, and over further you had another man by the name of Joe Sweeping, and his name was Edge Sweeping. And then you had the Bruton Sweeping. And you had the Beck Curtin and the Deck Curtin, two brothers that lived together in a small little house. Then you had the Fluto Curtin. You had the 60 Smith. You had the Cuter Collins, the Chance Collins, two brothers. They were two great characters. Any more? The Yellow Mick, another man. Yellow Mick, he walked quick and he talked quick. You could never make out what he was talking about. He talked so quick. Then you had the Ginner Carton Senior. He lived in Carduff. And then they christened another Jem Carton. When he died, they christened another Jem Carton, the young Ginner. Now, when he died, he had a son by the name of John Curtin, and they christened him the Ginner Curtin. So he kept running down the families all right down through. Then you had the Budget Moore in Carduff. He was out in the First World War. He was a great man. And you had Peter Rogers, another great. Then you had the Pummy Monks. They live in Carduff. The Pummy Monks, the Scora Monks. Then another brother, Jack Monks. I don't think he'd ever a nickname. But everybody, nearly every mankind in the parish carried a nickname. My own father, they called him Touchy Dennis. Then you had Mick Kelly, they called him Fargy Kelly. You had Stokes Kelly, and James Kelly, they called him Stokes Kelly, and James was his name. They begin to run out of my mind now of men with nicknames. Then talking about men walking, where they had to walk. I remember a man on the railway, over at the railway station, Tommy Gallagher, and I can remember him well. And he would walk from the station in Lusk to Highwood Quarry, or either that Cookie in Quarry, either the two of them. And he'd be there again 8 o'clock every morning. And if he was a minute late, he'd have to wait back till 10 o'clock to start. Wouldn't be allowed to start 1 minute after 8. But he walked that every morning. And he might get a lift home in a horse and car coming back in the evening. Men went near and far for work. Then when they come around the harvest time, when the farmers would have threshing to be done, I often remember men going as far as Gormastown to work at a mill for 8 shillings a day. And they'd be away in the morning at 6 o'clock to make sure they'd be there in time, and work from that till 6 in the evening. And mind you, working at a mill was no easy job. So the men had to put in hard times. There were hard times then, very hard times then. And mind you, it's a good job that they have improved. But talk about Lusk then, I've seen Lusk from the years back. It has changed 100-fold over the long number of years, and is the king to what it was then. Now, to mention about Lusk and all these characters, I have written a book of there's about 36 full-cap pages of a book about all these characters and where they lived, and pinpointing all the houses where they were, and they're all demolished now and new houses built in their places. So if anybody wants to see it, I will have it. It's been edited at the moment, and when I get it back, it's there. It'll be free for anybody to have a look at it and read it, and not for good that they can pass it back to me, but it's there, it'll be there for anyone to have a look at it. Now the Remount Farm, I can remember a fair bit about the Remount Farm. In fact, my father worked on the Remount Farm, and the British Army occupied that at that time, and they used to train all their horses and all their pack mules there. And I remember being brought down to Rush at one stage, and I, a little lad, on the arson car. I don't know whether it's the same arson car or not, but I remember going down in an arson car for to see the horses, the soldiers, jumping the horses off the pier in Rogerstown into the water and swimming them. And then they had a big ring which is still over there on the farm, where they used to gallop the horses, cinder track, and they used to gallop the horses around that, and the pack mules. They'd be travelling them around there for hours. And there were some lovely buildings in it, and lovely stalls there for the horses. But there was quite a lot of people who worked on it. Well, then when the war broke out in France, all the people that were working on the farm was all drafted over to France, conscripted, in other words, and sent to France to serve over there as workmen during the war. My father was one of them, and there was quite a lot of mankind at that stage from Lusk on it. Then, in sometime around 1923, I think it was around 1923, that the British got out of it then. They never come back to it, in fact, and they handed it over to the Irish government then. The Irish government had that for a number of years, which a small staff of men, about 5 men working on it at that time. And then the government handed it over to the Land Commission. So the Land Commission had it on their books for a number of years, and then they started. De Valera was in power then, and he got this idea then of dividing up all this untilled land, and he divided it all up among Rushmen and Luskmen, and they all had to, well, you had to pay so much an acre for it, but then you had to give a guarantee that you would cultivate it. So it was a godsend that was all done, and then there were a few buildings then on it as well. That it was sold out. People that got the land bought it. People that got some of the land got some of the houses, and the men that was working on it were let go before the Land Commission took it over. There was a couple of lovely big buildings there. One of them is in full swing at the moment. In fact, it was sold there the other day for a big sum of money, and they called that Captain Mills' house. And it was burnt down during the troubled times, and it was bought by a man that was working in the Land Commission. He was a big shot in the Land Commission. Roddy Hogan was his name. And he got it built back into the original shape it was in. And that'd be around 1933 that he got that house all rebuilt. And he lived in it for a good while, then he sold it to Dr. Flanagan. And now Dr. Flanagan was after selling it the other day. I don't know who bought it. But the house is still there. The rest of the buildings, which was along the station road, they were demolished. Then there was 2 more houses on the Rogerstown Lane, and they were occupied. Paddy Boyle is living in one, and his brother Joe Boyle is living in the other. And that was the only 2. That was the only house that was left. Now I can remember too, as a young lad. I was only a young lad, and an aunt of mine, Lizzie Davis, brought me over to a bazaar on it. There was a great bazaar, and I think it was run for the church at the time, but it was huge. To me it was huge, because there was a big merry-go-round of a hoppy horse, they called them then, but I was amazed at the size of this in the middle of the yard going around, and I was delighted to get up on it. But it was my first time ever to see a hoppy horse, and that always stood in my mind at this, and I've seen hoppy horses since, and I don't think there's any of them the size of the one I saw. It was huge, and the lovely music they had. But that always stood out in my mind. And there was thousands of people. You couldn't get up or down the farm lane. We call it the farm lane. You couldn't get up or down the laneway to it with the crowds of people that were on it. It took us ages to get up there. You were cruising. It was like going through the city of Dublin. Then after the land was all divided up, all the big buildings that was in the place was all pulled down. The stables were all pulled down and sold. There was a huge big, the riding school they called it. There was a huge big riding school, as big as any soccer pitch now. And that was all sand floor in there. That was all sand, and if it was wet weather, they done all the training of the horses there. I remember going over to it one time. The mill was thrashing on it at the time, and I remember going over to see this mill. And so when I looked in the door, I could just barely see the mill down the far end. It was just like a steam engine down at the far end of it. It was that big. So we used to have good times in it, because we didn't live far from it, and we used to be always back and forward to it. Now there was a great water supply all around that farm at the time too. All the water tanks were all automatic. Cattle or horses used to be able to take a drink from the thing, and now they just fill up like what we have now, the water cisterns now that we have that automatically fills it up. And these tanks always filled up like that. And the main water supply come from a quarry up here along the Dublin Road, here opposite Mark Taylor's. There was a huge big quarry there of water. And they pumped the water from that to the Remount Farm. And that water was pumped out through the fields then. But when you'd wake at night, you'd hear the tuk-tuk with this engine going, pumping the water. You used to always have it going at night. And they had their own generator then for light on it. I think there's at the moment there's a man living on the Remount Farm. He moved into one of the houses, that's right, on the yard, John Sherwin. Now a little on the farming end of it. The farming was, it went into it was in a big old way. There was more farming done then than what's been done now. And men put in more time on the land than what they put in now. And it was all manual work, horses. There was no tractors then. It was all horse work. And I don't know how they cultivated as much land as what they did when you see all the big tractors they have now around the land. They had good crops then. They always had good crops. And if you went into a field of wheat or oats, all this could be seen of you was your head, your shoulders would be seen. It was that tall. But now you could go into it and they'd be only as high as your knees. The crops would be very low. What they're doing with it, I do not know. Whether it's the fertilizers they're doing or are they spraying the crops to keep them from growing too tall or not, I don't know. But that time now, there was no such thing as fertilizers. That's what we have now. And we had the best of crops, the best of food, the best of crops that you could eat, the best of vegetables that you could eat, because it was fed on pure farm manure. It was cow dung, horse dung, you name it, but there was none of this artificial at all. Now the way this manure was made, how it was manufactured, that the farmers always kept plenty of cattle, stall fed. They bring all these cattle into the yards in the winter time, and they hand fed them. They hand fed them with hay and straw, turnips and mangle, and then they turn around the end of the season. Some of the sheds they mightn't be cleaned out for the whole winter, and then after the cattle was put out on land again, the next thing you got then, and that manure was all dug out with forks and loaded and brought out and put in a big square heap in the middle of the field, or somewhere maybe in a laneway or that they'd have a lay-by for it. And then when that would rot, it had to be left out for so long for it to rot. Then it was put out then on the land. Some land, if it was for, we'll say for oats or anything like that, it'd be spread out on the field and ploughed into the ground. But it was for potatoes or turnips or cabbage or anything like that to be drills made, and that manure then be put out in heaps, all in the drills, to be men employed then to spread the manure, and then the crops be put into it and covered over. Then the rush men, or some of the Lusk men as well, they'd give anything for a load of manure. They went to the city of Dublin where there was dairy farms or dairies in the city that bring in the cows in the winter time into the sheds in the city of Dublin, and the manure then, the local men here would go into Dublin, load that manure and bring it home. And they'd be out from 12 o'clock the night before, travelling to Dublin to the market, selling their vegetables, coming home with a load of manure, and they wouldn't be home till 4 or 5 o'clock the next day with a load of manure. And they do that twice a week and sometimes 3. I myself went to Dublin Road as a young fella, and I often done it 4 days in the week. And then I'd walk. Most of the time I'd have to walk. If my load was too big, I'd have to walk on the side of the horse or the pony. I had a horse and a pony. And in the summertime when there'd be potatoes and peas and things like that, you'd have to be going 4 times a week to the market. But in the winter time you might only go there once. But I used to never bring home manure. We always had it ourselves. We had enough to keep us going. But that's the way they manufactured the manure and that. Well then, they went to harvesting and that. The way they used to do the harvesting, that a lot of the farmers had binders, they call them, drawn with the horses. 2 horses they drawn, and it was slow enough. And then the corn might be lying, or they might be overrun with corn. There was men come up from the county Cavan, and we used to count them as great men with a soy. They all had to be done with a soy. Of course, years back before my time, it was all cut with a little hand hook, but then someone manufactured the soy, and then the soy was used then. But these Cavan men were great. They'd come up and they'd get stuck into it, and they'd cut a field of corn, and they cut an acre in a half a day. One man had cut a half an acre in a day. Then you'd have a man with him, as we'd say, taking it out. He'd be taking it out and putting it into bundles and tying it. Then it'd be stuck. They'd spend a hard day at that. I mean, they were hard-working men, but we had men around the area that could do it too. But you had to depend on these men coming in from Cavan, because you hadn't enough of men around the area to do it. And then at the end of the day, then when the corn would be dried out, it'd be all loaded on carts and bogies or whatever the way they get it in, draw it in, stack it in the yards, and then they'd order a meal. There would be a few mills in the area, and they'd come in then and they'd spend a day or maybe a half day or maybe 2 days thrashing, according to the size of the farmer, whether he had a big farm of land and big acreage of corn. The more he had, that's what the workman used to be looking for, was a man with a big acreage, so that they'd have a couple of days thrashing. But it was hard work at a thrashing mill. To be about 8 to 10 lads taken on at a mill, and you had to work very hard. You'd lose a lot of sweat at it. And you worked out about 8 shillings a day That time is something around £20 a day now for a day's work, or £20 an hour rather. But money was very scarce at that time. But of course, there again, the cost of living was low. So the wages were low and the cost of living was low. So it's gone sky high now, and so is the wages. I know myself, when I was started work, I was earning something around 8 shillings a day. 8 shillings a week, sorry. 8 shillings a week. Then it went up to 12, went up to 15, up to 18, down to £1. But when I started work, then out, and I was getting £3 a week, I went to work in Portland Mental Hospital. I was working on the farm up there. And I think at £3.8, I thought I was a millionaire for a couple of years. But I left that altogether and I went to another job. But the last job I was in, I know that when my wages went up to £100 a week, I thought I was a real millionaire. But I think the young people now at the present day don't know the value of money. We valued it. We knew then when we got money, we knew what it was. But the young people nowadays are not getting enough in their hands and that. No value on it. Now to go back to some of the land, we had a lot of large farms here which was owned by different big landowners. And all there was on it was a man and a dog. And it was set out to to cattle people that ran cattle and that. And they'd rent that land for to put their stock on it. And there was a caretaker attached to the place, and he'd look after the cattle. He'd herd the cattle, and he was paid so much a week for looking after them. But that land then was taken over. Devil turned around and he decided he was going to hand it all over to the land commissioners and divide it out. So Tunda's land above in Belaley, that was the first land that was divided out because my father got some of it. And that was all given out as a freehold. You hadn't to buy any of that. That was given out as a freehold, but you only get so many acres of it, and you had to have some ground of your own before you were allotted that. That was all divided up then among other Rushmen, and some of the Lusk men got it. And then after that then, you had Horns of New Haggard, a big landowner by the name of Horn. He had a lot of land there, and it was all divided out among Rushmen and Lusk men, but you had to buy that. But it was on a small percentage of money for that. It wasn't big rate. I think it was something around £4 an acre they paid for it, but they got it for little or nothing. Of course, £4 might have been a lot at that time, but it was still cheap. After that, then you had the Remount Farm. Then was divided out, and you had to pay for that. And then after that, then you had Gough for Rogerstown. Now they didn't take over all of Gough's ground. He wasn't able to manufacture it all. He wasn't able to work it all. But he used to work a lot of it with hay and corn and things like that. But he was getting on in years, and the sons weren't interested in working it either. So he decided he'd put it up for let the land commission take over. I think he run into a bit of trouble. I think that's what happened there. And they took half it off him, and they divided that all up among the Rushmen and Luskmen at a small price. So that land is all now it's in full swing. The commissioners then they built roads here and there down through it when they got divided it up for assessed to the land. Now there's the commissioners' road, as we always called it, right down through it from the railway station there. You go down Rogerstown Lane, that's to call that down to Rogerstown Lane. You go down that so far, and then you go on to the Commissioner's Road, which brings you right down to Belaley Tiphead. Now that road wasn't always there, and it was a great boon when that was built there, when that road was done.